So today I'm going to just kind of use this time, and we're going to talk to Colin a little bit. Colin, here, it is such a pleasure. But like I said, we have a job for you. I know you're ready for it, and it isn't so much today, but in the days to come, in the next few years, and it's some important stuff. Colin, you got to figure out who you are. You got to figure all that out. And he's got some things going for him. He's got his parents. He's got his church community. There are going to be teachers that are going to come into his life, and all are going to help him figure out the gifts that are his. And someday you're going to have to make a living. You're going to have to figure all that out. And he's going to have to figure out who his friends are. And he's going to have to figure out who he is, how he defines himself. And that's a big deal. All of us have to do that. We've all had to do that. It's a big deal. This last week, I've met several young people in the last few months who are in my orbit, who are going by names today that were different from the ones that their parents gave them. And they are defining and redefining their gender. That's a big deal. I've watched my sons, actually, one of them where they're on the flat tire right now, they are on their way out to a camp at a school that he's thinking about going to in a couple of years because they're trying to figure out what the next step in their lives are going to be, and that's a big deal. The psychologist Carl Jung, he saw the importance of this whole process, and he popularized something talking about the first half of life and the second half of life. And the first half of life, that's when you ask these really essential questions about what is necessary for a person to do. And yet when you think about all those questions about, like we ask about ourselves, like what defines ours, let's be honest, it's just a little bit narcissistic, right? You know, it's all about us. Think about this in terms of religion, too. In religion, people try to define what they believe about God. And God knows that when in seminary, I spent so much time, years, writing papers and preparing for examinations about how I understand the nature of God, the universe, and everything. I had to be clear about it. I had to be able to articulate a consistent theology. Because people want to believe that their religion is absolutely true. And people will put a lot of energy into living the right kind of life, a life that will get them into heaven, right? Or having a life that just exudes so much virtue that they will be well thought of. And yet, it's all kind of religious narcissism.
I need that. Okay. Jesus told this parable to certain people who had convinced themselves that they were righteous and who looked at everyone else with disgust. Two people went to the temple to pray. One was a Pharisee and the other a tax collector. The Pharisee stood and prayed about himself with these words: God, I thank you that I am not like everyone else, crooks, evildoers, adulterers, or even like this tax collector. I fast twice a week, and I give 1/10 of everything I receive. But this tax collector stood at a distance. He wouldn't even lift his eyes to look towards heaven. Rather, he struck his chest and said, God shows mercy to me, a sinner. I tell you, this person went down to his home justified, rather than the Pharisee. All who lift themselves up will be brought low, and those who make themselves low will be lifted up.
And then you've got people who know this parable really well, who like to humble brag and try to look the part of the tax collector. Yet the truth will out. Colin, whatever path that you take on this first half of life journey, I pray, and I mean this in the most loving way, I pray that it all falls apart. I want you to fail. Because there are a lot of people who go into old age having never grown up. they continue to define themselves by their career or a look that they want to have, or maybe by their education, their intellect. And they work up on shoring up that image for as long as they possibly can. As they get older, they put more and more energy into it. And then they worry so much about how people will think about them. And then the worst thing comes when as you get older in life and you start worrying that people aren't thinking of you at all anymore. And the worst outcome for someone who is stuck in that narcissism of the first half of life, of those questions of image, the worst outcome is that people stop thinking. People stop seeing you as the person that you've worked so hard to be seen. And Colin, you're going to have so many voices who are going to be encouraging you to be perfect, to follow the rules, maybe not to chase cars up on the chancel, things like that. So many rules. And they're going to tell you that that's how that you're successful. And what I want you to know is that the concept of perfect is a mathematical or a divine concept. What I want you to know is that goodness, kindness, are beautiful human ideas that include all of us. And I would rather see you as less perfect and kinder. So Colin, along the way, I pray that you experience that all of the things that we see and all those gifts that we're going to discover in you. I pray that at some point they fall apart. Because the truth is that unless something disturbs the pool that we've kind of been narcissistically gazing into in our lives, we're not going to move forward. We're not going to grow. And at some point, there's an image that you created for yourself, that image that you have for yourself, it's got to break. And maybe it'll be a death or a divorce or a health crisis. Maybe it's cancer. I don't know what that is, but I don't like that. There's going to be a moment that's going to come when you realize what Jesus taught, that the way up is down. You can spend your entire life climbing the ladder of success. And however you define what that success looks like for you, only to find that the ladder was on the wrong wall. And then you've got a choice to make. Do you desperately try to repair your image? Try to fix everything, pull all those pieces back together to try to make it look like you still have it all together, and actually you take another step on that ladder because it looks like now you've gained wisdom and experience. Or you start a new journey. You get off that ladder and you ask a new question. You're going to spend so much time figuring out who you are, and there's the big three. Your identity, your security, your livelihood, your sexuality, and your gender, the big three. And yet, hopefully the day is going to come when you're going to ask, is there more?
Hear these words of Jesus. Don't worry about your life, what you will eat, or about your body, what you will wear. There is more to life than food, and more to body than clothing. Consider the ravens. They neither plant nor harvest. They have no silo or barn, yet God feeds them. And you are worth so much more than the birds. Who among you, by worrying, can add a single moment to your life? And why would people gain the whole world but lose their lives?
Your life is so much more than whatever image that you've created for yourself. My hope is for you is that you come to the point in your life where you use all that you've developed, all those skills that you were blessed with, to live deeply and fully and to stop worrying, or at least to worry a whole lot less about the mundane stuff, and think about what the meaning of this life is for you. What is the purpose that you have for existing? And so for those of you who are maybe a little bit further down the road on life's journey than Colin, maybe you're retired. Ask yourself, for all the years in that career, what do you want to do with your one wild and precious life? What's the meaning of it? I'm feeling this these days. In just a few weeks, it's going to be a Sunday, actually, October 2nd. On that day, I will have lived longer than the days my mother was given on this planet. Cancer cut her life short. And I've wondered and I've imagined what her life would be like today. Every day we get is a chance to live compassionately, to love faithfully, and to celebrate that you and I have a shot at living a greater purpose, a purpose that God calls us to. Now there are days, because you get busy, and at days the idea of having to ask a question of the deeper meaning of life sounds exhausting. And particularly you've got your duties to God and country, to your family, your job, to your church community, and it can feel like all too much. And trust me, I get that. I feel those pressures. The world will always make demands of you, but sometimes just knowing that there is a second question to life, that there is a deeper question about our deeper purpose with God, just knowing that that question exists, puts all of those other things in perspective. That your value is not being perfect or being seen that way. What will you do with this one wild and precious day that God has given you that will be worth remembering in 10 years? Colin, God has given you life and a wonderful smile. You are not a cosmic accident. You are here for a reason. And what I want you to use is the days of your life to explore that. And I want your parents, because I know you're going to exhaust them. I want them to look at the day that they have with you and know that they are blessed just to have you in their life, that you are a blessing. And I want for you and I want for everyone to know that God doesn't expect you to be perfect, but to live and allow yourself the grace to grow and ask the deep questions, knowing that there is more to life than the building identities and creating tribes and friendships and learning impulse control. There's more to life than all of that. It's more than reaching goals. It's about going deeper and finding a meaning and a sense of purpose. And to do that, you're going to need a teacher. You're going to need a guide. And next week, we'll get into that a little more. Because finding a guide that is best for you, it's important, and there's some tricks to it. But for today, on the day of your birth, or the day of your baptism, Colin, come to know that you are a spiritual being on a human journey. Will you pray with me? God, you made us more than just a job, or a gender, or a relationship. You made us creatures of light. Our spirits are eternal. So remind us of our true, deeper identity and help us explore the questions of your purpose and your meaning for life. Amen.